Welcome to Smart Man and Smarter Woman, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. I am Steve Lotz.
And I am Juliet Aurora.
And we are your co-hosts. We have a great show for you today with our very special guest, Shrad Rao, CEO and founder of Wagepoint, an awesome payroll software company. But before I officially introduce Shrad, let's hear from my wonderful co-host, the smarter woman herself, Juliet.
Welcome, everyone, to our podcast episode. We are certainly looking forward to having this conversation with Shrad. We are huge Wagepoint fans, use it with almost all of our clients that have payroll, and also as a person and as a leader, have had a great amount of respect for Shrad, what he's built, and the culture that he has in his organization. So looking forward to picking his brain over the next half an hour and being able to share some of his wisdom with all of you. So welcome, Shrad.
Oh, hey guys. Thank you very much, Steve and Juliet. Just so you know, you two are my two favorite people. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy to share, with your listeners, and as whatever I can, I'm happy to put it all out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Shrad. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, this is for entrepreneurs. And our goal is to provide in each episode, hopefully some entertainment, but most importantly, some value, perhaps some insights, some tips, some gold nuggets that may help other entrepreneurs, no matter where they are in their own journey. So a little bit of background about our guest. He splits his time normally between Toronto and Atlanta, although this interview, he is actually in San Francisco. He graduated from the University of New Brunswick with a BA in accounting. He has achieved his certified management accountant designation. Early in his career, he spent time as a financial analyst in several different industries with large companies. He then moved into the SaaS space, and in 2012 founded Wagepoint, an online payroll software company. And today, as he continues his quest for global domination of the online payroll world, his company is serving tens of thousands of happy customers throughout the US and Canada. He also happens to have, which I don't think is by accident, the world's friendliest team at Wagepoint, and certainly we would agree with that. So welcome, and thank you again for joining us. I am sure during these crazy times, with all of the payroll subsidy programs, being announced in the US, Canada, that running a payroll software business has probably been pretty boring in the past few weeks. Not much going on, but perhaps you'd like to why don't we start off by maybe sharing a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's been a real snooze fest at the company. All payroll companies right now are essentially the epicenter of everything that's happening in terms of employee, layoffs and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, the joke is that we'll sleep when we're dead, literally, in terms of, the mountain of work that we have to get done has exploded. It has gotten a lot better though, and in part because of the government's response and how well in some cases they're tackling this situation. So it has gotten better, but yeah, my entrepreneurial journey is, it's an interesting one from my perspective because for me, it was very deliberate. Like I didn't accidentally fall into it. It was sort of a chosen profession for a very long time. I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur since the time I was very, very young. It was either that or a journalist or Indiana Jones. And no one was really, I couldn't get Harrison Ford off his Indiana Jones streak there. So I had to figure out the other two. And my grandpa said, I wanted to be a war journalist. And my grandpa was like, no, you won't. And so then I was like, all right, then I guess I'm an entrepreneur. And for me, like being an entrepreneur is actually just about being able to give yourself, build the future that you want. That's really what it is. Yes, it's nice to be financially successful, and that's there's a huge amount of validation in that. But the fundamentals are being able to curate your company. Like, I don't want to suffer fools. I want to pick the people I work with, and I want to love them. I don't want to just like them. And then I want to be able to influence change. I want to be able to decide based on a variety of inputs where we should head. And I also want to be able to be wrong, which is something that people don't often think about. But if you're an entrepreneur, you get to make those decisions. And if you are wrong, you own them. So I guess it's all of those things that made me want to be an entrepreneur at an early age. And so I came to Canada as a university student. I didn't know a single person when I actually moved here. Literally, the first person I met was the taxi cab driver that took me to my university. So I've always I've always had hustle and just sort of doing whatever it takes to make it work. So somewhere around the time when I was I call this indentured servitude, because when I had actually graduated from university, you had to work with the employer that was on your work permit. First of all, you had to get a job, and you had to do that within 3 months of your last exam, which is crazy. Like, the last thing you want to do going into your last exam is thinking about that you have only 3 months to find a job or you're kicked out. And because Canada's tuition credits are so good, you would essentially recover half of your tuition paid, which would be about $40,000 if you actually stayed back and got a job. And I owed it to my father to be able to do that because he paid for my education and I was repaying his retirement. So I had to hustle. So I called Irving Oil's HR department because I was like, I want to work for that company. So I called them up and I said, you don't know me, I don't know you, but we should meet, and here's why. So I went to meet them. They said it was a junior accountant position. You guys will find this funny. They took one look at me and they said, you do not have the personality for what we're going to ask you to do. They're like, you will come in and go postal on everyone. No, we will call you back when we have a better opportunity for you. And I said, that doesn't help me stay in the country. But then just incidentally, I got a job with Sobeys as a financial analyst. And then 6 months later, I got a call back from Irving saying, remember we told you we'd call you back? This is that opportunity. Come back. We really want you to join. They sent me this beautiful letter, which now I have lost. So I'm sorry about that. That sucks. But yeah, so they sent me this letter. I came back to Irving, and then I did 4.5 years there, I think. In the meantime, I finished my indentured servitude, so I was no longer trapped with any one employer, and I got my immigration. And literally, like within 6 months, I was like, "Here you go, thank you very much, goodbye." And I had saved $18,000 to go give myself 1 year to do whatever it took to find my business. And I'm also an entrepreneur that I am not in love with the product. I'm totally in love with problems and solving them. If anything, I have to turn off that part of my brain when I hear other people's problems so I don't have to solve it. But that's kind of the genesis. I mean, I'm sort of giving you a bit of a backstory too to how I thought about entrepreneurship and then how I got into it. Because I came from another country, I really had to be very steady and very disciplined about how I actually got to this place. Finally, the story of how I got to payroll is because I like problems. I was looking for to solve a problem in a specific type of market. I wanted a problem that was I wanted a product that was a painkiller, not a vitamin. So basically, need, not a want. I wanted like I remember thinking I wanted to be able to trip over customers anywhere I go. Like if I was, eating somewhere, that could be a customer. I was getting my haircut somewhere, that could be a customer. Like that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then I knew I day one decision, I knew I was going to build SaaS unit economics. So I was going to keep an eye on gross margin, make sure that it was, it looked like a SaaS company. And that was a day one decision. So it was a combination of those things that led me to payroll. When I sort of looked at that space and I was like, there's legacy players, sort of large incumbents, I don't want to use the word dinosaurs, but you can if you want. And then they have this huge total addressable market. And I had a very distinct feeling that they were underserving small businesses. Because the problem is with payroll, you can't have you can't be everything to everyone. You kind of have to pick your group, and then you have to like commit to them as if they are the only people on the planet and nobody else matters. So that kind of rigor and discipline you need to have for your target market. And given the fact that they were all over the place, I had a sense that we could make headway there. So that's sort of like the journey from an entrepreneurship standpoint to how I got to payroll.
So that was a very interesting journey and very different from some of the other guests that we've had, and other stories that we've heard. And I've known you for several years, and I didn't know all the nuances of that story. So so my first question though is, so what was the role that Irving brought you back because they thought that you were what was the right role that they brought you back for?
I was financial analyst.
So it was a financial analyst. So they didn't think that you had the personality for a junior accountant, but that you did for a financial analyst. So that's interesting. Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, I think one was more like sort of, I don't want to use the word rote function because that wouldn't be fair, but it's more like, it is more standard fare day to day versus an analyst is obviously about, you're basically, actually analytical thinking. And I think they just figured that I would be able to communicate business information to other people in a way that would make sense for them.
Okay. And so one of the things that you said, which resonated, and again, I've never heard it articulated that way, was that one of the things that you knew about going into business for yourself was that as an entrepreneur, you had the ability, and you made it sound as though it was a good thing, and most people may not. So I wanted to reinforce it, that you would own your own mistakes. So yes, you're in control of your own destiny, but that you also get to own your mistakes. So I thought that was great, and I wanted to kind of pull that out of your conversation. And I guess the other thing that, from my perspective, is different from other entrepreneurial journeys is most people don't approach it the way that you did, where you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur, and then you went looking for a product or service in order to fulfill that need to be an entrepreneur. Most people do it the other way around, where they have a product or service that they're passionate about and have that product or service before they make the decision to be an entrepreneur. So that is very different from most people that kind of go through this entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, actually. I think tech entrepreneurs tend to be like this a lot, in the sense that it's about a problem that they've identified that they want to solve. And I just happen to have a sense for what problems I wouldn't want to solve. Like, for example, like I didn't want to solve a problem that, like, so for example, even today we're getting new customers, which is crazy, right? You would say, why would new businesses be forming, or even like businesses be switching over at this time during COVID? But it's because it's a need product, not a want product. It's not a nice to have, it's a have to have. And I was looking for that specific type of thing. So yeah, I think being methodical, and like it's very important to have passion, but my passion is about business building, but particularly when it relates to the company that I keep, which means that what I've always wanted to do is build a kind of company where people in my company feel like this is how businesses should be built. We weren't going to like follow some standard format for how companies should be built. We're going to build our own version of a company. And that was more interesting to me. So we happen to be payroll, right, but this is the whole purpose for me, is to build something where the collective group of people feel like there's something, the energy of our company is totally different than any other company I've ever been to. And that's in part because it's totally a day one decision for how we would structure the company and how we would treat people in the company. Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Again, very intentional, not only about what kind of product or service you wanted to offer, so need versus want, and as well what you wanted that the end result to be of your organization. So some great pointers already for members of our audience who maybe are starting their journey and don't know what it is they want to do. These are some great starting points for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, there was some great comments there. One thing I would like us to do is, particularly with what's going on in the world right now and how so many workers are being really forced to work remotely, many who have never done it before. So it's a whole new experience. And of course, with WagePoint, you guys have always been remote. And I did read your article in the Globe and Mail, which I thought was great, on mental health tips for, for people who are experiencing all this for the first time. And I would love if you could perhaps share a little bit of what you talked about with our audience, of some of the things you feel are important based upon your experience to help people who are being put in this, what, like I say, for many is just a brand new situation of working solo remotely.
Yeah, for sure. It's WagePoint's always been remote. It's actually, now we seem like oracles, but it wasn't. It's not the case. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. In reality, the reason we've always been remote is because payroll is a hard resource to find, or rather a hard skill to find. I didn't want geography to be another thing that we had to contend with. That was it. So it's another deliberate decision around, what do I care about? Do I care about where they live? Or do I care about them having payroll skills? And I said, well, obviously it's the latter. So then we just decided to become really, really good at remote. So everything we've done, like all the success we've had, all the tens of thousands of customers that we're serving now, are all done remotely. And so I'm definitely proud of that. But what I know, this is a challenge for some people. For us, it's now second nature. I don't even think about it. But for the most part, the best tips I can give, one of the biggest ones is there is a confusion of how to reach out to each other. So for example, it feels like maybe you're interrupting someone's work now because you're actually calling them, or, sending them messages or whatever. We have developed a cadence where it's okay to interrupt. Like, it's okay. Like, don't feel like, so you basically set the parameters for what that's going to look like. So for example, if you say, I have office hours from like 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock every day, you can bother me as much as you want. Everyone can bother me as much as they want at that time. But before that and after that, that's my time to get work done or think or whatever it is. So my point is, set the parameters for communication as if you were in an office. Do the exact same thing. Because it's very helpful. What is really unhelpful is when nobody really knows the rules, right? So that's like one of the first things, and that immediately alleviates anxiety, just sort of being able to say, this is how you can reach me. In my company, I'm very accessible, so people are constantly pinging me, and I'm pretty good about making sure I keep them sort of in the loop. When I'm not reachable, they don't feel bad because they know that I genuinely wasn't available. But that is a cadence that we have built over the years. So that's one. Just set your communications plan even when you're working from home. Make sure that it's okay for people to know when and when not to reach out to each other. That's important. Second thing is around having social events, which again, we've seen a lot of companies do this. We've done this many times over the years. We've had office Christmas parties remotely, which was really fun. Of course, now we do everything with Zoom, just like everyone else. But we also do, and again, this is all dependent on how long COVID goes, because I know some people like Juliet are just itching to go back to the office. But we've had fantasy football for during the World Cup. So we do all kinds of things that keep people interested and excited, and we also mix teams up all the time. So at our company, we use Slack, and we have an app called Donut, which is a free app. If you guys want to download it, you could actually it'll randomly match people in the company to talk to each other. So that's another sort of way that you could break some of the silos down. And fundamentally, though, it's all about expectation setting. Make sure that you have your employee or your staff and you have a very good understanding of what productivity looks like. This is not the time to be kind of wishy-washy about productivity, because this is actually what causes stress for the employee. If they don't know how to actually, when they are doing a good job, especially in a remote team where they cannot show visual cues of that by coming to work on time and submitting work on time, or looking busy. If they can't do those things, then they don't know how to demonstrate that to you. So make sure that you have that solved probably before everything else. And so those are some of my best tips.
That's some great advice. So I have a question. So what does an office Christmas party remotely look like? So I know that there are some companies who are 100% virtual, and once or twice or three times a year, they bring everybody together in one physical location. And sometimes that's around Christmas so that they can do a Christmas party. But what does a virtual office Christmas party look like at Wagepoint?
We will continue with our conversation right after this message from a friend of the show. AIS Solutions is an award-winning cloud accounting firm serving small business across Canada. If you want to move your bookkeeping from the desktops of the dark ages to the cloud and get your financials wherever you are, whenever you want them, then contact AIS Solutions' team of trained professionals today at www.aissolutions.ca. And now, back to our show.
Well, so we also do that. We bring different groups of people together. So like in November, we had, it was called the WTF conference. And that was an acronym, by the way. Each letter stood for something. And so I had asked the group to come up with a name for the conference. And then they kind of, fooled around with me by coming up with that. So anyway, we renamed it to Wage Stock. And it was really fun. It was crazy fun. But outside of the in-person, the virtual Christmas parties, one, we actually sent physical gifts to each other. So we did Secret Santa and we did physical gifts so that at least something feels tangible in the way that exchange is happening. We would then, we basically get on a call, maybe do like a round robin of like how thankful we are or whatever. What is the best part of the year? Of course, there's a lot of us right now, so it's harder to do. So we may break that up into pods. But we very often will not. I'm a big fan of this. I don't want the same group to keep meeting each other. Even if they don't meet each other enough, that's fine. Then you solve that on your own time. When you come to an office virtual Christmas party, mix people up that have never met. Hopefully your company culture means that they will get along anyway, which is how it works at our company. So it's just basically us sort of talking to each other as real people and not talking about work, but talking about things that make us happy in our lives. And so it's really no different from what happens in a regular party, right. Except we do it online. Okay,
thank you. And just for reference for our audience, how many employees do you currently have on the Wagepoint team?
So with everyone, we have almost close to 70.
Wow.
So it's a big team at the moment, and it's only going to keep growing. So obviously some of these things we'll have to keep reassessing and reconfiguring. Like for example, I would rather have 4 small mini conferences than one large one, just as an example, just to keep the cycle going. So stuff like that. Also, one thing that we are looking at, and this COVID has kind of ruined this a little bit, but we actually are looking to build a social clubhouse for employees in multiple cities. So basically work still happens at home, but the social elements of work happens at this place, at a little spot that we are going to create for people. We're going to make our own small WeWork so that we can actually have a tangible representation of our culture, but also have a place for them to sort of come together and just be social. And because productivity in the house is so high, I can actually justify putting them in an office and having that potentially at risk. It's all very funny stuff.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, listening to you, it's obvious that culture and the culture of your company is something that is very important to you. And we're always taught that when we're hiring new team members, that not only do they need to fit with our culture, but ideally they should add something to our culture, something positive. What are some of the things perhaps that you look for when it is time to add to your team? When you're looking for, regardless of position, what do you look for in an individual that okay, this person is going to be great for our culture and our team?
Well, that's a great question because as you guys know, I still hire everyone, or at least I always do a culture call with every single person that is about to join the company. A culture call is essentially me talking about who we are as a collective enterprise or as a collective group of people as opposed to what we do. The what we do is sort of easy, right? I mean, once you know payroll and do you have the skills, great, like let's shake hands on that. But the who we are is far more important because now you're inviting someone into that group. And you, as the person who's making that decision, is essentially taking the collective group's, like, hopes and dreams about who you're bringing in. So you have to represent them, the whole collective. So first of all, I don't make decisions that are based on who I like, because I am, a certain demographic, a certain, age, whatever. I'm gonna relate to someone. If I'm only picking people I relate to, that's not the right way to do it, because they're not going to work with me. They're going to work with the collection of people inside the company. And so my job is to represent their interests, essentially, when I'm about to hire someone. So one of the first things that I look for, because I know this is super important for everybody, is if someone appears to be kind. And I know this is a hard thing to gauge on a call, but like there are people who they'll tell you stories about their life. And that's the other thing. I almost never do like interview questions because I don't even know what to ask. That would be, how would you even assess who someone is by those questions? And that is I think this is a fundamental problem when it comes to hiring, is you look at the what and not the who, and the who is everything. The what is just a part of it. And so you really, what I do is I try to understand who they are and ask them questions about their life. And in those questions, sometimes they'll talk about looking after their parents, or, something about just their general demeanor. This seems very like kind and gentle and compassionate. And these are not words that, again, you use in business, right? You don't use words like kind and gentle, but yet those are the types of things I think my team would appreciate. So that friendliness, I know this sounds crazy, but like are they excited about this experience of working with another group of people that feel the same way? And more than anything else, I look for realness, like somebody who's just real, somebody who I believe is just representing the best version of themselves that's real. Because I try to make them feel comfortable very early in the call to make sure that they know they can just be themselves. And that has worked wonders, because literally I hear a sigh of relief from that. So it's all of those things. Like it's never just one thing, but I do know that the foundations are almost always based in that authenticity.
And so do the candidates that you speak to and that you have the culture call with, they've already gone through a vetting process from other members of your team?
Yeah, so they've gone to the what we do already. And very often those people, like whoever is sending them over to me, will tell them, just be yourself. He's gonna just be yourself. You don't have to be nervous. He's the most casual guy ever. You're gonna have a casual conversation. So by the time they come to me, for the most part, they're just like ready to just accept what is about to happen. I hear this all the time. I've never had an interview call like this before. And I said, that's because this is not an interview. This is me and you having a handshake agreement to how you are going to interact inside of this company with all the 70 people that sit in there in a virtual environment. It's us making an agreement, a tacit agreement about that. That's why this is not an interview.
I remember hearing you say in one of our previous conversations that one of the things that you use to, I'm not sure judge is the right word, but to evaluate, is whether or not at the end of this culture call, whether this is someone that you would want to invite to your house for dinner. And then if it isn't, you wouldn't hire them.
Yeah, because I mean, like, so much of what people say is, I mean, if you think about it, right, they're making a decision for themselves. They have to want to come to dinner first, right? Like that's just the first, the first part of the invitation. The second one is, do I want to invite them, right? If I knew they were going to be coming over, am I excited about that? Am I going to go out of my way to do something special for them, right? And it's not even about my house. It's about my collective house again. It's like, if I brought them to a party inside of this company, could we all be friends with this person? And again, it's not any one person and it's not any one trait, because there might be something that is annoying about them, but can we love them anyway is the question. And there's some things that we cannot, right? Like if someone is like racist or sexist, and I know these are very obvious, but if they say something that's inappropriate right off the bat, they don't have the judgment for that. And that is really what we're looking for. Do you have good judgment? Because if you have good judgment, you can drop that person into any scenario.
Right.
So that's pretty much it.
So do you find, a lot of business owners, small business owners, especially entrepreneurs with a small team, tend to hire people in when they're in panic mode, when they have way too much work, they're overloaded, and they just need to hire somebody. I need a body. So do you approach it differently, that you're looking for people before you actually need them?
Yeah, definitely. That's part of the planning process. But also, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, you guys, but have you, like, when you first hired someone and you just realized that you have so much more time to do other things?
Yes.
Wasn't that feeling amazing? Right? And then you were like, wait, I have this other thing, I could give it to someone else too. And then this third thing, and whoa, this is how companies are built, right? Yeah. I'm sure you've experienced what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yes.
That is why we pre-plan, is because as soon as I start feeling like something that I'm doing is getting overloaded, or something someone else is doing is getting overloaded, it's our job to sense it before it happens. You won't get it always. Sometimes you'll be early, sometimes you'll be late, but your job is to know almost before it's about to crest, because you could sense something is the energy of the place has changed a bit. And I know, like, I talk about being very esoteric about the way I approach stuff sometimes. Like, you have to balance if you are relying only on fact and data, then as an entrepreneur, you're not focusing on the fact that there's a lot of decisions that are made abstractly without a linear process, like this happened, therefore this happens. And you are making abstract decisions very often. So you have to be able to evaluate, even from the urgency of someone's voice in your team, you have to be able to evaluate how busy do they, even the feeling of busyness is something for you to pay attention to. And that's really what I'm trying to say.
Okay, thank you.
That's terrific. It's I would like to mention something as well, that it's obvious, or it certainly is to me. I don't want to speak for our audience, but that your leadership style, your management style, and I know one of the things that I've heard you say on several occasions is you want to build the kind of company I've always wanted to work at.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. The first time I heard you say that, I thought, yeah, this is a guy I want to get to know better, because you don't hear a lot of people say that. And so I just wanted to mention something to our audience. On the Wagepoint website, there is a resource that if you have connected with anything you have heard Shrad say in the last 10, 15 minutes about building a team and managing a team, then you really need to check out this resource. It is called the Epic Guide to Employee Management, and it is awesome. And it is free. Go to wagepoint.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and click on the link and grab that resource. It really is an awesome resource. Talks about communication with your team, time management, performance management, facilitating employee growth, lots and lots of stuff. And I thought it was fantastic. And if at the same time you want to sign up for Wagepoint, I don't think Shrad would have a problem with that at all. But even not, even if you're really happy with your current provider, go grab a copy of that resource. I think you'll be very glad you did. It's very well done, and there's lots of great stuff in it. So congratulations on putting that together and having that on your website. Great resource.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that. And you're now my favorite podcaster.
Thank you. Well, that was the aim, but thank you anyway. The coming out of this crisis, as we will, because all things do pass, is there advice you could perhaps give to entrepreneurs? Maybe something that they could think about regarding their own business, perhaps evaluating or changing in their own business that might help them to come out stronger on the other side of this and help their business come out stronger on the other side? Because so many of them right now, I think, are, they're maybe floundering a little. They're scared, they're frustrated. And it's, right now is probably as tough a test of being an entrepreneur as you could possibly get for many. So anything you could share.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really depends, right, on the type of business you are. If you are the kind of business or, that is impacted by this, my heart goes out to you. I know how hard it is. Our business has also been impacted given the fact that we service small businesses and we're not immune to the fluctuations in that market. But in terms of like advice, see, part of I think part of what I notice young entrepreneurs in particular doing, but maybe even, seasoned folks in different industries, is we tend to overplan and as opposed to execute and then iterate. I would say that now is the time to execute and iterate, because you need to be more adaptable than sort of stick to your plan. This may seem very common sense, but I've actually seen this happen more, like, because now, I'm fortunate enough to give advice to people here and there when they ask me for it. And what I've noticed is that people say things like, this is where I hope to be at this time. I'm just going to keep working on that. And I was like, but have you really just taken it 3 months at a time instead? Just try to just think about what you're going to do in 3 months, and then tomorrow do something for that. So instead of thinking about your 1 year, literally plan 3 months at a time, because you will actually be much more flexible in your own mind when you are planning at the shortest possible turnaround or the shortest possible time than if you actually are planning too far out. So that is my biggest advice, because even for me, for my own business, yes, I have some vague idea or some, idea of what's going to happen in the future, but I'm just sort of taking it, 3 months at a time. And it's almost like, trying to get to the end zone for football, right? Like you just want to like huddle, get to the next, 10 or 20, 30 yards, and then just worry about what happens next over there. And that's really what I'm suggesting is probably the right way to think about it.
That's great. Or
great. Rather one way to think about it.
And maybe don't let perfect get in the way of excellent.
Well, I've never been a perfect person. I've always been an 80% and done person. So, and this is partly what I was saying, that, you have to give yourself room to fail. Like, this is what I meant. Like, if you are waiting for perfect, you will actually find it very hard to get stuff done.
Yeah.
There's a place where you need to be perfect. Like, for example, in payroll calculations, don't try to be 80% there, right? But in terms of...
Please don't.
Yeah, those would be like detrimental. So where it's negative, don't do that. But where it has neutral consequence, then, just sort of 80% is fine. Like, don't try to make everything pixel perfect when that may not be your most important thing to focus on at that point.
Okay, that's great. Well, that brings us to the part of the interview where, for those of you who have never seen, used to be a show on TV called The Actors Studio, hosted by James Lipton. And it used to be one of my favorite shows. And one of the things I loved was at the end of the show, James Lipton would always ask some questions to his guests, and every guest got the same questions. And so we do that here on the podcast. Those of you who listened before know that. But for the new listeners, this is what we're going to do right now. And so without further ado, we'll get started. What one word best defines an entrepreneur?
Good question. I'm going to say the one that I think most resonates with me. I think balance is the best word.
Good. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
War journalist.
What profession would you not like to do?
Sewage worker. I think that's a pretty common one.
That's a great one. We actually haven't had that answer before. I think that's a great answer. What sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound of laughter at my jokes.
Of course, that was a given.
Look, there, you're doing it right now.
Okay. What book would you recommend for entrepreneurs?
So I often talk about how I don't read a lot of business books, but there's a Harvard Business Review book that you could get. There's a collection of different articles, HBR articles, and it's called On Emotional Intelligence. I would recommend that because it actually in those papers it actually talks about how EQ outperforms IQ significantly, and I think that a lot of people again who try to make decisions very logically will find it illuminating.
Okay. When your own entrepreneurial journey is completed, what do you hope your legacy is?
I hope I've built a safe, happy, and productive environment for people to have worked in for the time that they have worked with me.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, good job. And if our listeners want to connect with you and reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that? And I'll spell your name just so everybody gets it right when they want to find you. It is ShradRao. What's the best way for them to connect?
I would say LinkedIn would be the best. Just go find me there. It's literally Shrad Rao. Twitter is another one. And yeah, if you really want to if you sign up and you tell them that, hey, listen, I heard about Shrad on the podcast and I want him to give me a call just to talk to me for 15 minutes, I'll do that. So
I appreciate that.
There's a third way to get in touch, and that's like my Easter egg way.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Very generous of you to offer that to our audience.
Absolutely.
Terrific. So let's, I am, as most of you know, I love quotes. And so the quote for this episode, a true leader has confidence to stand alone, has the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent.
Perfect quote. I think that's very appropriate for our guest this week.
And I thought so too.
Thank you, guys.
You're very welcome. Again, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. You've been a great guest. Lots of great nuggets for our audience. Thank you to my awesome host, as always, the smarter woman. And thank you, most importantly, to you, our audience, for tuning in, giving us a listen. I really hope you found some value here. And if you did, please subscribe, leave us a review, share with a friend. It's all greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Until next time, take good care of yourself, those you love, and bye for now.